Greetings, Obluminati. I'm here for my feature interview, which was originally going to be done in the end of May, and basically it got pushed back because I was trying not to speak at all because I still hadn't finished recording clean vocals for the new album. So I basically was in the studio trying to track and just basically trying to not talk at all and just give my voice every bit of rest that I could. So that actually takes me to the first question, which was from Stephen Scherer. And he asked, how's it going recording the vocals in Florida? Any significant differences from recording them in Australia? Any unexpected challenges? So I guess the unexpected challenge was that I got sick, which was very frustrating because in April, I actually asked Troy McCosker, our producer, if there was any chance of slotting in a recording session with me early because my voice was feeling really great. I was really prepared and I knew all my stuff and was feeling really confident. And then, they were busy with guitars and all that sort of stuff, finishing that off, and didn't have time to fit any vocals in. And then about 2 days before they finished all of that and were ready for clean vocals, that's when I got sick. And unfortunately, because I then still had, we had a deadline of May 9th. I was flying to Florida to mix a record. I still had to fit in recording violin and, assisting with other parts of the record that I'm normally highly involved in. And that was very frustrating. So basically, I landed in Florida in May, not feeling that sick necessarily anymore, but my voice just hadn't come back. And basically the main symptom I'd had when I got sick was, because I just had a cold, but my throat was really sore and it just wouldn't go away. And if I sang, my throat would start to hurt, which is not ideal. And it was just meant that I could sing a bit, but it just didn't sound, that great. And, it's all good and well. You have a live show and you're not at your best and you push through and make sure that you give fans the best show that you can. But for an album, you can't go and record, something that's pretty good. It's got to be, the best you can do. Because that's the only chance you ever get to record those songs. So, that's very important. Basically, once I got to Florida, I was working on mixing the record and finishing on some editing on some other parts while I was over there. And at the same time, I was just basically trying to look after myself and get myself in a position where I could be ready to record soon. That really didn't happen for a while. I was only supposed to be there 2.5 weeks, and after a couple of weeks, we still hadn't been able to do any significant vocal recording. And so we pushed back my flight a week, and thankfully, I just basically thankfully it all worked out. I mean, I basically took a couple of days break from assisting with the mix on the record and just got a couple extra days rest. Thankfully that worked okay. And all of a sudden, we started to get some great vocal takes, and the pain in my throat disappeared, which was great. Now, I guess the other big difference was that I wasn't supposed to have them recorded with Mark Lewis in Florida. I was going to do them in Australia. But it was actually a really fantastic thing to have happen because Mark was really, is a great producer, and he did a really great job with the clean vocals. I'm really excited to hear what you guys think of my clean vocals on the new record, because personally, I think they're light years above what I did on Citadel and Port of Eye. I thought Citadel, the clean vocals were a lot better than Port of Eye, but I think the difference on this record is even more. And I've been working hard for a couple of years to try and become the best singer I can be, and I feel like on this record finally some of that was starting to come across. And Mark Lewis definitely pushed me in certain directions, and we've had a great ear, and we were really on the same page. And so it was really wonderful working with him, and it definitely had an impact on the way that the vocals came out, which is great. So it was one of those silver lining things where the clean vocal process was enormously stressful, but the end result I'm really happy with, and so hopefully you guys will dig it too. Okay, so getting on to next question from Mikhail Zermendi. Something I missed from your earlier sound is the heavier black metal influence. Trem picks and blast beats are pretty much my favorite thing in the universe, and there's definitely smatterings of it in Citadel, but not so much for relatively long stretches like in Tapestries, Xanaflux, or Icicles. Do you feel that got pushed to the background because it doesn't allow you to switch around with all your fantastic transitions and progressions as much, or was it sort of unconscious, and how much of that style can we expect to see in the new album? Thanks for your question. Personally, I mean, I think that the reason people associated us with black metal more than anything else, I think, was Zen's vocals, because back in the day he sang it in an exclusively black metal style. Like if you listen to the Aurora Veil demo from 2007 and you listen to Zen's vocals on that as opposed to on Portal of Eye with some of the same songs, his vocal approach is different, and it makes some of those songs sound a bit more black metal on the Aurora Veil and a bit less black metal on Portal of Eye. Now, I really don't reckon guitar-wise we do much black metal at all. I mean, the opening of Tapestry of the Stars Abstract is a black metal riff. There's parts that are very dark and extreme, like say, Xanaflux. But I mean, like say Icicles, I mean, the first half of that is pretty thrashy, and the second half of it, I mean, lots of open chords, and it's very intense, and I think it's more Zen's vocals that, and maybe the production that make it seem a little bit more black. On Citadel, I mean, I don't really think guitar-wise there's anything that is a black metal riff on that record, to be honest. But there are bits that still sound very dark and extreme because of Zen's vocals. And it's also, I guess, then the drumming of, the double kicks and blast beats and stuff like that mixed with some of that. So we kind of have some of those elements, but I kind of feel like guitar-wise, we kind of moved away from that black metal thing quite a while ago. Like, I mean, really even before the Aurora Veil, like our very early stuff, like if you listen to the stuff on the 2 EPs, there's maybe a little bit more black metal on that. But it really just was a natural, organic thing where we just... we write, we really don't think about it too much. And, the band kind of started with this kind of a bit of a black thrash sound in the very, very, very early days. But, I mean, I was like super into, Opeth and Dream Theater and stuff like that. And, I think probably I'm partly to blame in, I guess, pushing things in a more progressive direction over the years. As far as what's on the new record, I'm not sure there's anything that is overtly black metal, but there's definitely some very dark and extreme stuff that I think you guys will really dig. And there was actually a section that was quite overtly black metal, but it just didn't make the cut because it didn't quite flow. So it is something that we still look at. It's still a style that we really love. I would say that it's very likely that there'll be some more overtly black metal stuff in the future. But I don't know when, but but it's definitely just this organic thing where we really don't think too much when we write, just however it comes out is however it comes out. Okay, next question from Hannah and Avintha Fonseca. Hi Tim, do you write the lyrics for your clean vocal parts, or is it in collaboration with Zen? Also, what was your approach to composing the violin sections for the new album? Okay, so Zen writes all the lyrics. And the reason for that is that when the band first started, he was I didn't sing, I just play the violin. And then, I would just sing like one line in a song or one section. And so he would do the lyrics for the whole thing, and then he would just do the lyrics for my section as well. Now, obviously, I sing a lot more these days, although he's still the primary vocalist. But I still haven't started writing any lyrics, partly because his lyrical style is just very different, and it has quite a really interesting artistic approach to lyrics, and we like it, and it's kind of associated with the band now, and it would kind of feel weird to change it too much. So that doesn't mean I'm never going to write any lyrics, but I wouldn't surprise me if I didn't, to be honest. It's not something that concerns me at all. Basically, what I do is I write melodies, and then I'll do a recording of the melody and give it to Zen, and I'll give him an idea of the rough number of syllables I need for a line. So it'll be like, here's this line, and I need between 7 and 9 syllables in this line for me to be able to sing it the way that I want to. And so basically he has that kind of as a template, which he then puts together, and then I adjust the lyrics with him to make it work with the melodies that I want. So for me, it's the music that comes first, and then he kind of works with me to make that happen. Now, in regards to how I went around composing the violin sections for the new album, probably the most common way that I compose is I have a session of the song on my laptop with Pro Tools 12, and I have an MBox Pro that I use at home, and basically I will record and improvise different ideas. And so basically I'll might record a violin solo like half a dozen times, just improvise, just doing whatever comes to my mind to try and get an idea of which bits grab me and which bits don't. And so that's definitely something where I think that approach works really well for me. I mean, sometimes I have specific ideas in my head, in my imagination. Other times it's just experimentation and, searching for different things and trying out different things and seeing what comes together. And then basically I'll listen through some of the different improvisations I've done and pick out ideas that I like, and then actually flesh them out into fully fledged composition. So that's probably the most common way a lot of the parts were written for this record for violin. Joao Ares, how do you share your creative process and ideas with the others? Record with your phone, something, write the music in paper, whistle and record with your phone, jam together with others, have great ideas in the shower, etc. I guess the most common way I share stuff with the others is to record demos via my MBox Pro and Pro Tools, which I then will email to the other guys. We really did not rehearse very much at all for this record. Between December and meeting the studio on March, I think we only rehearsed once, which might sound weird for you guys, but I mean, everyone's got basically home recording equipment now, and so sometimes it's actually more productive to leave people to their own creative space and then send stuff through. Now, we still got together sometimes, like Matt and I team up really well, and there was, 2 or 3 times where we got together to work on a specific section because, I had an idea, but I needed to work with, someone else to try to bring it to life and that sort of thing. So there's, times where we'll do stuff in person like that, and then, I remember actually with that, I went over to Matt's one time and we wrote a new section for a song, and I recorded it straight onto my phone that evening, and then I emailed the audio track from my phone to the rest of the guys. So I do that sometimes with vocal melodies. Sometimes I'll be singing along to a demo in the car, like an instrumental version of the demo, and I'll put on the voice recorder to quickly record a melody idea that I have. So it's definitely a variety of different ways. Yanya Ublaznik, what are your plans for future tours? When can we expect you back in Europe? Well, the album's going to be out later this year, and then we'll go straight on the road. As for Europe, I was talking to our booking agent just the other day, and at the moment, he was saying, sometime early next year, whether that's February or March or April, I don't know, but that's what we're aiming for, and it'll definitely be within a few months after the album comes out. We're going to be trying to get to everywhere. So no matter where you are, I guarantee that we are looking into it and hoping that we can get there. Ron Miller, any chance of Obluminati exclusive vinyl? I still need a few more copies of Citadel. Yes, there is going to be a Obluminati exclusive vinyl. I actually just confirmed that with our record label yesterday. So I'm actually going to put up a post probably about the same time this goes up, asking how many people are interested in that, because we need to know how many people will be interested in buying it so we know how many to order, because it will be very limited. So it might be the sort of thing where we do 100 copies and then that's it. So we kind of want to know, I guess, how many people are interested. So expect to look out for the other post on that, because it'll probably go up about the same time as this video. Merlin Vermeer, what bands' albums did you listen to during the making of the new album, and do you think they've influenced it in certain ways? Okay, to be honest, I really didn't listen to any music the last 3 or 4 months, which sounds weird. But sometimes when I'm songwriting and working on stuff, I actually find it better to clear my mind of anything else and just have my mind empty. And when music pops in, it's then related to what we're doing. And then I can basically just play around with ideas in my head. And there are times where I'll just be walking around or, waking up in the morning or lying in bed at night or having a shower or whatever, where I do have ideas in my head, and sometimes having that clear of other music can help. Um, and yeah, so really, I don't think anything in that regards influenced the album directly. Um, I think on the other side of it, I mean, everything I've ever listened to influences the music that I and we create, but that's in a more historical context from everything I've been exposed to over the last 35 years since I was born, which is a much longer discussion. And yeah, if someone wants to ask me about that for the next interview, feel free. um, Gliss. Hello, Tim. Who decides what songs you guys are playing during live gigs? Is it a vote or some sort of or do you as a manager take the lead and decide? I'm asking this because I really want to know who to bribe in order for you guys to play when the Black Hands dance live next time you're in Romania. So generally, I write up a send list and send it to the guys, and then they say yes or no. So I mean, it's very much it is a bit of a vote thing where basically if I send something through and the majority of the band wants something else, then we change it, and we go from there. I mean, in general, I would say that it's very unlikely that we'll play any of the EP stuff live, just because I mean, even for the next tour, I mean, we want to play most of the new record, and that, then if we do most of the new record and a couple tracks off Citadel, a couple tracks off Port of White, that's like an 80-90 minute show just there. And I mean, we really like the stuff on the EPs, but we don't think it's as good as the albums. I mean, that's why. I mean, that was the first stuff we wrote. So I'm not going to say that we'll never play stuff. I know Zen doesn't really want to play the EP stuff at all. He's a bit over it because it is very, very old. But we'll see. But I would say it's unlikely. But I mean, I guess what people do need to understand, we would have to take off another song that maybe you really like instead, which is difficult. LW, did you really write Painters of the Tempest Part 2 all by yourself, or is there a typo on the Citadel vinyl sleeve? That is a typo, and it was a bit of an awkward one because basically Zen just made a mistake with the booklet because Part 1 was written by me, and Part 2 was a whole band composition. Like, I mean, all of the full band compositions are always listed as being written by everyone because everyone always has an input. If anyone should be singled out, Benji actually wrote more of Part 2 than anybody else, clearly. And then Part 3 was written by Benji and me. So basically just put the wrong thing in the wrong section, and the preview we had was all pretty small on the computer, and no one zoomed in enough to really check that. And it wasn't until actually it was printed and someone got a copy in their hand and they went, oh shit. Yeah, which is not ideal, but yes. So for the record, no. I basically any full band song you ever hear is always written by the whole band, with everyone having some input. There's never been a full band song that anyone has done by themselves. And like I said, if anyone deserved more credit for that one, actually, it would be Benji. Jona Hostetler. Tim, was there any styles of music or study that primarily led you to the violinist that you are today? Basically, what the violinist I am today. So that's a really long, involved question. I'll try and summarize it as easily as I can. So basically, I would say that I'm I was a Suzuki violin student as a kid. So I studied the Suzuki method with a Japanese teacher in San Francisco in California. And then, like I when I came back to Melbourne, here in Australia. I did that from when I was 6, and I was exposed to lots of wonderful classical music, and my favorite violinist when I was a little kid was Itzhak Perlman. And then as I got older, in high school I started getting into punk and hardcore and then metal and all that sort of stuff. And I was also then starting to get into a little bit of jazz. And I first got exposed to jazz through a jazz violinist in Sydney called Ian Cooper. I actually did a jazz workshop at a Suzuki Violin Festival in Sydney, and also there was this busking group, or there was a little jazz group called the Penguins that used to busk in Chatswood Mall in Sydney. And I bought a CD of theirs, and they had a version of Autumn Leaves, which I learnt note for note. And that was kind of my introduction to learning. Those two things were kind of my introduction to learning a bit of jazz. And so I got interested in Stefano Grappelli and Jean-Luc Ponty and violinists like that. And I started learning how to improvise and learning lots of jazz standards. And that basically started getting me thinking about violin in a different way. So instead of thinking about it as a purely classical violinist, I started thinking about sliding and different types of vibrato and improvisation and all that sort of stuff, which really developed my creativity. From there, probably then the change in the way I played in Neo came about because I was a really big fan of Nevermore, and Jeff Loomis is one of my favorite guitarists. And I discovered Dream Theater, and John Petrucci really just blew me away. The things technically he could do on the guitar, and I just wanted to be like these guys more than anything else. And the other one was John Coltrane, who is a saxophonist. The stuff he did on his instrument just blew my mind. It just felt like there was this direct line from his imagination onto his instrument, just completely unfiltered, which was incredible to me. So for that, it was really the combination of all those things. So it was that, I went to university and studied classical music. I did my honors in classical music performance at the same time. Sometimes I would go down and jam at some jazz clubs. And then at the same time, I was incredibly into heavy metal, and I was really in love with, Jeff Loomis and Petrucci and other metal guitarists. And I was also in love with this really, raw improvisational style of someone like John Coltrane, especially in his latter, more avant-garde period of his career, like A Love Supreme onwards, for those that know much about what he does. And so it was really a combination of all of those things. Plus, it was a combination of being influenced by the people in the band. And seeing a guitar solo in a Neo song and going, oh man, I want to play that faster, or I want to do that, or maybe I can try and mimic that guitar squeal on my violin. And so it was really just, I guess, being immersed in that world of heavy metal and wanting to play like that, but being a violinist. Okay, next question. Karu Caviccioli, do you have any classical influences? Maybe some modern neoclassical inspirations. Your playing often reminds me of Nigel Kennedy's original compositions. I don't feel like there's that much influence in the way I play classically. Some of my favorite classical violinists, like I said before, Itzhak Perlman. I also love Pekka Kuusisto, who's a Finnish violinist who's really incredible. There's some really great violinists around, but there's not a lot that I've probably mimicked in the way that I play really whatsoever. However, there's definitely a lot of classical influence in the way I think about composition. Arvo Pärt is a composer that I've been very influenced by. I absolutely love his approach to composing, that notion of repetition and development that he uses, and also composers like Philip Glass, stuff like Ravel and Debussy I love. Shostakovich is one of my favorite composers, as is Beethoven and Mahler, so I love lots of intense stuff. And Bach as well. They're probably some of my favorites, and all of them have influenced the way that I think about music to some degree. All right, Cormac Jordan. As a manager of a band using crowdfunding as its main income, should unsigned and upcoming acts put a price on their music? Should you make it free and get it out to as many people as possible, given band income will mostly just come from merchandise, gigging, personal investment anyway? I think as an unsigned and upcoming act, the most important thing is to develop a fan base. So basically, you kind of got to think about it in two stages. You need to develop a fan base, and then you need to monetize the fan base so that you can keep doing what you're doing. Which sounds very crass putting it like that, but like that's basically like the music industry, that your business income is the people that like the music. You try to sell them product, which is the music. But you really need to separate that because people like it. People like the band because of the music, and so I mean I would actually go a step back and say the most important thing that you can do is really spend as much time as you can making the quality of what you do as good as possible. One thing that we really had in Neo was a culture of high standards and expectations in regards to practice and rehearsals and expecting a lot from people on their instruments. So there was a culture in the band where, once people joined the band, they got better and everybody got better. I mean, Dan was a new drummer. He'd only been drumming 2 years when he joined the band, and we demanded a lot of him, and he was very talented and he worked very hard, and so now he's incredible. And really everyone in the band has really come an enormous way from where we started. Like I'm 35 now. I always joke that it'd be much easier to tour in a band when you're like 21 and you've got no responsibilities and no kids and all that sort of stuff. But and the funny thing is that we started the band that long ago. I was only 22. Yeah, I was only 22 when the band started. But the thing is, we just weren't that good. I mean, we just weren't. We were just like a typical local band. But we worked our butts off, and I think that's the biggest piece of advice I can give to any upcoming band. Practice, 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 practice. I used to do 3-4 hours violin practice a day. I mean, there's lots of talented people out there. The only way to get somewhere is to outwork them as well. I mean, I think that's probably the best bit of advice I give to any band. Now, once you think you've got a product that is a piece of art that is worthy of being a product, and that's the way you got to look at it. You got to create a piece of art, and then once it's done, then you go, okay, well, now we have to start thinking about this as a product that we can sell or market to get fans. And you need to basically get that out there in any way that you can. So, I mean, I think with newer bands, it's really not that important to be getting that much financial return. I mean, at the same time, you want to try to get something so that you can keep the band going yourself. So it does depend on where your band's at and how much money you need to be able to keep going to do the next thing. That's where something like Bandcamp is like pay what you want can be good, because you can put something very cheap, or you can even put it free and pay what you want, and some people will still pay for it, which means that you can still get money for it, but at the same time, you're also not putting a barrier there. On the flip side, I mean, you can just do something like you do a new EP and you just put it up on YouTube for people to stream and then make it available for purchase. So, if people want to check it out for free, they can stream it free, and if not, then if they like it, then they can buy a copy if they want to take one around with them. So I still think that works pretty well. But it's definitely, our focus, we always view the internet as a really positive thing, and the advent of the internet and file sharing and, internet forums and social media, all that sort of really helped us in our early years. And then it was, I guess the Patreon was like, well, everyone's talking about how all that stuff's crap because you can't make any money anymore. And that was, I guess, why we came up with the Patreon idea in the first place. Because it was like, well, the internet has actually helped us get all these fans. So now we need to work out how to turn that into something that allows us to keep the band going, because there's no point getting all these fans and then saying, hey, I'm sorry, but the band's broken up because we can't afford to do it anymore. So I hope that makes sense. Val Pellerito. Touring must allow you to visit interesting places. What has been your favorite country place to be in? I think that favorite places, yeah, I mean, lots of places, really. Probably one of my favorite places is Ireland. My family heritage is Irish, and, I managed to get a couple days on a festival tour in 2015 where I managed to take 3 days by myself to travel around and see a bit of Ireland, and went to, a little town in, County Clare, where my mum's family came from in like 1856 or something like that. They're like not recently Irish, but and that was really cool, and just things like that. And I just love the vibe there, and it's really beautiful. And the Cliffs of Moher is like one of the most spectacular places I've ever been. I could just sit on the edge of that cliff forever. I really love Paris. Rome is one of the most special places that I've been in the world, as well. Just the history there is incredible. Um, but then, I mean, other places really spring to mind just because of how great the shows are. I always love going to Finland because everyone seems to love us there, which is great. And the two tours we've done throughout the USA and Canada have been incredible because the fans have just been so amazing to us there consistently across the whole tour. Romania is a fascinating place to go, and we always get lots of love there. It was amazing to get a chance to go to Tel Aviv in Israel and see what things were like there, and people were really cool to us as well. Japan is probably one of my favorite places to tour. I really find their culture really fascinating. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely interesting going everywhere. I have a lot of interest in, I guess, the world and the way everyone interacts, and so I kind of find traveling around very insightful. You go to China or India or Japan, and you see their cultures, and then you see how those people then interact in Australia, and you understand a little bit more about, oh, okay, cool, that's what their culture is like, and these are their values and stuff like that. And some things are the same and some things are different. Talia Ramirez Garcia, I don't have a question yet, but maybe you can tell us what is your day-to-day on a regular basis, or is your favorite food and drink? Well, I'll work backwards. So 95% of what I drink is water, or I drink a lot of lemon and ginger and chamomile tea. I said I'm a very boring singer, and then when I have like an alcoholic drink, these days I pretty much only drink either scotch or red wine, and I just kind of found that those were things that I worked best with my health. And so, but I really don't drink on tour at all, and I'm on tour half the year, so I've really just got out of the habit of drinking altogether almost, which is weird, I guess, for a touring musician. I think a lot of professional bands, you'd find that a lot of band members drink way too much in comparison to a normal person, and then the singers barely drink at all, because they need to make sure they look after themselves to the nth degree. Now, as far as my day-to-day schedule, I really don't have one. I now work from home in general. I've just been doing Neo full-time for the last 18 months. It was about October 2015 that my nice private school violin teaching job, that they said that it wouldn't work for me to teach there anymore because I was away on tour too much. And it was after that I said to the guys, well, let me stay home and work on all the business stuff while everyone else goes off and does their other jobs, so that I can work out a way to make us some more money. And that's what we did with the Obluminati thing, and that was basically came out of that opportunity that the guys gave me to invest more time in the business side of things. And then basically the idea has been then to try and get the whole band in a position where everybody can be focused on the band full time. And that's not quite where we're at now, but we're on our way. And that's because of you guys, so we really appreciate it. But yeah, my day to day, I get up and I have breakfast, and I try to go to the gym 3 or 4 times a week if I can. I'm super focused on my health, because I have had quite a few health issues over the years, with other stuff that maybe I'll get into another time. A lot of it is just, me sitting at my desk on my computer, doing some violin practice, doing some singing practice, and then going off and spending time with pick up my daughter from kindergarten, and, I have her, a couple nights a week and all that sort of stuff. So it's just really there's no consistent thing as far as my timetable, but it's basically just fitting in whatever needs to be done for Neo stuff, week to week. Next question from Smear. Hey Tim, last round you mentioned a passion for social justice. Given the chance, are there any causes and issues you'd like to bring attention to? If so, what are they? Okay, so yeah, I guess I do have a big passion for social justice. I mean, something I'm not sure if I've mentioned before, but my dad was actually a politician when I was a little kid, and he kind of always drilled into me that we needed to look after everyone in society, and yeah, and that just because you had money didn't mean that was how do I phrase this? I guess basically it was that idea that a lot of people vote for their own personal interest, and a lot of people with money vote to basically maintain the status quo so that they keep what they have, instead, I mean, people should be, voting and acting and legislating in a way that is for the greater good, not going, well, this is going to be good for me, or this is a good tax cut for me, so therefore it's good policy or something like that. So it's just like it's more that emphasis of looking at the bigger picture of what's actually good for society instead of just thinking about what's good for me personally. Whereas any particular issues, I'm really passionate about. About the plight of refugees and asylum seekers. I mean, it's been a big issue in Australia for about the last 15 years, when the Prime Minister at the time, John Howard, politicised, a boat that was coming with asylum seekers to Australia. And it was very unfortunate because basically it's this weird thing where you can have an asylum seeker that manages to hop on a plane and land in the country, and they can declare they're seeking asylum. Whereas someone arrives on a boat and all of a sudden everyone's worried that we're being invaded. And the amount of people that arrive via boat to Australia in the past were not that much at all. Like, there's significantly more arrived via plane. But it was just that, I don't know, it's that imagery of the boat coming in as if you're being invaded or something like that, even though it really was a very small number of people. And it led to issues where, genuine refugees were being, stuck on, on basically in prison camps on islands like Nauru, for example, off, away from Australia in the Pacific Ocean, and being held there for years sometimes, and being refused entry to Australia, even though by the UN refugee convention that we signed, that's actually illegal. But obviously that doesn't mean shit, because Australia's never been charged with breaching international law, even though we should have been, like a lot of countries, to be honest. And the difficult thing with that, I guess, is that I haven't actually looked at the stats for this for a couple of years, but it was over, I think it was about 95%, but it was at least over 90% of asylum seekers coming to Australia via boat were genuine refugees. And there had never been a case ever in Australian history of a terrorist or someone related to terrorism coming to Australia via boat. And so, so people who worry about that, it just has never happened. And it's not like these people still aren't vetted when they arrive. They don't just get let into society automatically. If they can't verify if they're a genuine refugee, then they don't get let in. But there've been times where, like over 90% of the people who are arriving by boat have been, in the long run, have been found to be genuine refugees, and some of them are then, or they used to then get let back into the country anyways. We're spending like literally millions and millions of dollars trying to stop these people coming in. And the irony is that some of these people would flee from like places like Iraq and Afghanistan, and like literally we would have refugees. We have quite a few refugees from Afghanistan, and so we would go and contribute to a war in Afghanistan, and we would be part of that war. And then when people leave that country and say, you know, I'm fleeing for my life because, you know, my country's at war, and, you know, we need somewhere safe for our family to go. Our country, was involved in that war, then says, no, sorry, you can't come here. You're an economic refugee. I mean, it's insanity. I mean, we're involved. Like, we're there. We know what those places are like, and we just do it as a political thing, you know. And, you know, we had a sad situation where the Conservatives put that in, and then the Labour Party basically got a bit in voting on an election about 2001, and they've been too scared to stand up for it. So basically, everyone's just gutless. And unfortunately, there's now significant issues worldwide with refugees and migration. There's a lot of issues through Europe, because there's just enormous amounts of, you know, people coming out of Syria and Sudan and places like that, and, you know, places where there's enormous issues and, you know, huge humanitarian issues, and, you know, wars happening, and, you know, civil wars happening, all sorts of stuff where people need help. But at the same time, you know, there's only so much space, and there's only so many people that can be helped by each particular country. And so it's definitely becoming more difficult. I mean, I feel like Australia's issue is very small, which is why it seems to me so ridiculous that it's such a big political issue over here. Because the amount of refugees taken by, you know, countries throughout Europe, I mean, like Germany, for example, or really anywhere in Europe, is it's just, you know, light years bigger than what we have to deal with in Australia. And so, I mean, countries like Australia should be pulling their weight more and offering more assistance to these people, so that other countries, like, for example, Germany, who's taken an enormous amount of people, don't have to carry as much of a load. I mean, so that's one of the things I think is important, that, you know, people remember that, you know, these are genuine people who are fleeing for their lives, and you need to temper that with the reality. Yes, we also need to make sure our countries are safe, and that we're not letting bad people in, and stuff like that. So it's a difficult balance for sure. I guess we'll go on to the next question, because a little bit related. Dylan O'Brien, a little off topic, but you always impress me with your strength of moral character. Who would you name as moral influences and role models in your life? Sorry for late input. Well, I mean, definitely my dad, because of, you know, I guess that stuff that, I mean, a lot of people would say that, you know, you don't talk about, you know, religion and politics, you know, when you're at the dinner table or stuff like that, or at a dinner party or out with people or stuff like that. But, you know, like, I mean, growing up in my family, like, politics was like one of the main things that would be talked about at the dinner table, you know. And there was always a lot of attention, not just in Australia, but on world events and what was happening in different countries. I guess some of my biggest moral influences and role models in regards to people that I've studied and that inspired me, I guess, in regards to, I guess, the sort of person I wanted to be, was, I guess, Martin Luther King Jr., Malcolm X, Nelson Mandela, Desmond Tutu, you know, I mean, all people who, you know, were trying to do great things. I mean, everyone is flawed. And if you look at, you know, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, and Nelson Mandela, they're all basically, you know, part of a minority seeking justice for their people, and they all went about it in different ways, and there were all positives and negatives to the way they went about it, but they were all aiming for a positive in the end. And it's funny because a lot of people view Martin Luther King as this, like, really pure person, and Malcolm X is this kind of, like, well, I mean, this, like, crazy revolutionary or something like that. But if you read the latter speeches and, you know, public speeches of Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X, they're actually very similar in where they end up at the end of their lives before they both got assassinated. And I think, Martin Luther King was really focused on that with races, we could really bring people together if we could just get everyone in the same room and get to know each other a bit more. Because he was from the South and everything was very segregated, so they really just didn't have that much involvement, really, like with blacks and whites. Whereas Malcolm X basically believed that there was no hope, and we just needed to get all the Africans out of the US and go back to Africa. It was like that very separatist approach, and he was part of like he joined the Nation of Islam, which was like a separatist Muslim group that basically, was a bit more extreme in that regards. But yeah, by the end of their lives, I mean, Martin Luther King went up to, I think it was to Chicago later in his life, and saw, some of the, the plight of African Americans there, and how they were still discriminated against, even though they were allowed to live in the same city, and there was no legislated segregation. It still existed in regards to, people's work opportunities and their housing opportunities and their ability to have an equal life. So he realized that, actually it wasn't enough just to get everyone in the same room, that there was still a long way to go. And there still is, as much as society's improved in some ways, there still is. Whereas Malcolm X, towards the end of his life, he went across to the Middle East and went to Mecca, and came across all these Muslims from all across the world, and started to realize more and more that it was less about, I guess, started to realize more and more that it was that people really weren't that different all across the world, and it was a bit more of a cultural thing between the races in the US, as opposed to it being something that was impossible, because he was there and he was hanging out with people from all around the world, and in a harmonious way, and realized that that was possible. So they both kind of ended up in that situation where they realized that it was they were still aiming for that thing, but it was difficult. And I guess then with someone like Nelson Mandela, he was part of what was essentially a terrorist group in the ANC, which, and he was, I think at one stage he was the head of the military wing, and they like bombed, targets of where some innocent people did die and stuff like that. But it was essentially part of a war to I guess try to liberate their people. So there was a lot of justification behind it, but I mean they definitely went about things in different ways, whereas they're all kind of, I guess, all people fighting oppression, and that was something I guess I had really keen interest in, and I guess I had a lot of inspiration in regards to making sure I was always aware of the plight of other people. And my favorite saying is, where but for the there but for the grace of God go I. And it doesn't have to be in a religious context. It's just that reminder that around that in your life, the positions that you're in, good or bad, aren't just of your making. Anything that good happens in your life or anything that bad happens in your life, it's not necessarily just because of you. Like you can have the exact same person, like you can in completely different scenarios, and their lives will end up differently. And I think that it's important to remember that I was very lucky to have a stable family growing up with two loving parents that supported me, and they supported my music, and they sent me to a good school and had money to pay for violin lessons with a good teacher that helped me to get a career. I've had all this assistance, so like whatever I've achieved in my life is not just because of me or any talent that I have. It's because of this enormous amount of things that were totally out of my control. And likewise, you have other people like just as maybe smart or talented or whatever, who don't have any of that help, and it's incredibly difficult for them to achieve any of those same sort of things in life. And then you have some people who maybe have that exact same thing, and they're in a country that's at war, or that has all sorts of problems. And I think it's just important for people to remember that if you're in a position where you're got a roof over your head and you're not worrying about food every day, then you're pretty lucky. And that we do have an obligation to try and make sure we look after those who don't have that. And more than any political leaning or politics or anything like that, I think that's the thing that is the most important, and that people should be focusing on in their politics, making sure that everyone is looked after, and not just presuming that you can just do give tax cuts to super big companies and trust that they'll pass the money on to people down the ladder. I think that history has shown that's never really worked, unfortunately. But anyways, enough of my political ranting. Last question is from Joey Vandercrook. Top 4 books and movies. So for books, I really don't read a lot of fiction books, to be honest. So most of my favorite books are nonfiction, and it's pretty related to actually what I'm just talking about. So honestly, if I said what were my favorite books, it'd probably be the autobiography of Martin Luther King, the autobiography of Malcolm X, and same goes for Nelson Mandela as well. There's a really interesting book by Desmond Tutu called No Future Without Forgiveness, which is about, I guess, the challenges of forgiving, sometimes very horrific acts in some of the stuff that was happening with some of the genocide that happened in Africa in the 90s. And I thought that was very interesting, just reading stories about what that happened and the Truth and Reconciliation Council that they had there. So I found that really fascinating. Aside from that, what else do I read? Look at my bookshelf. It's mainly political books. It's lots of books on violin technique and things like that. And then just a handful of other things here and there. I've got an interesting book which was a bit influential to me when I was probably just out of high school, by Jimmy Webb, called Tunesmith. And Jimmy Webb actually he's a great songwriter who wrote like House of the Rising Sun and things like that, for anyone who has a bit of history in there, in what they know. And just learning about traditional songwriting, and the way that you can analyze traditional songwriting and lyrics and creation of all that, which is ironic. I say that influenced me a bit in the early days, but ironic is that I can't write a traditional song. Like I try to write a pop song and it goes for 6 minutes. So, but it gave me an understanding of that traditional element. And then I guess most of the time I choose not to use it, or if I use it, I use elements of it. But that was something that definitely I found interesting as well. And then for movies, I guess, what do I like? Some of my favorite movies are Memento, Machinist. For something totally different, like Anchorman or Wayne's World. It's kind of Wayne's World I kind of grew up on when I was a little kid. Yeah, so those are a few things that I like, or Star Wars or Lord of the Rings. Probably like TV shows. Like a lot of people, love Game of Thrones, and Stranger Things was great when that came out last year, or this year. I'm losing track. I think it was this year, actually. Yeah, so there's lots of cool stuff around at the moment, but that is it for me. That's all my questions. So thank you for sticking with me if you made it all the way to the end. I thought I would try to give you guys some in-depth responses rather than just giving you short things, because I guess have the time to give that sort of proper responses on here and give you guys more detail that wouldn't normally be able to do on this sort of stuff in other interviews with press and stuff like that. So hope you enjoyed it, and apologies if you don't agree with my political rantings. That's totally fine. You can still not agree with me and like our music, I hope. But thanks for all your support, and I'll talk to you guys more soon. Thanks.